It's 5:01. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting of the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. A quorum of board members is present. I will note that Dr. Montgomery is out of town on business today, and so is Mr. Christopher Floor. This meeting has been duly called, and a notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer or meditation, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and honors to the Texas flag. Please join me in the U.S. pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We'll start our meeting off with public comments, and I believe we just have one person signed up. Keith, I can't read your last name. If you'll just stand at the podium there and state your name and address, please.
My name is Keith Gilbertson. My address is 13757 Dandelion Trail, Belton. I'm not going to tell you anything new. I guess, first of all, I should say thank you for your sacrifice of time. I mean, when you take time out of your day for this, to deal with an issue as important as what you deal with, our children, we appreciate that. I'm not going to tell you anything new. I just want to affirm some priorities. And the priority that has come to me is the conservative nature of our community and its bearing on the selection of our next superintendent. I'm involved in some residential properties in West Temple, and I'm amazed at the number of people that come through from Waco and Austin that are interested in moving to Belton or West Temple. That's no reflection on Temple proper, Dr. Battershall. It's just that they have heard, they have researched, and they are aware of the Belton School District. If they have children, if it's not the top priority, it's very high. And then the second thing is the residents, I guess, within the community. We just kind of got this thing rolling here Saturday, but we started a petition, which basically we're asking people to sign that conservative superintendent needs to be high on your list of priorities. And we have about 100 signatures in really one day. And I'm not aware of all the procedures as far as presenting this to you at the next meeting, but I feel at the next meeting we could have in the neighborhood of 1,000 signatures because the response has been excellent. And again, I guess just to thank you for your time. We appreciate all you do, and my grandkids do too. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I would encourage you, after you get all your information, you can share that with our secretary, Ms. Connie Burns, and she'll make sure that we get that information.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the 2017 bond and construction project update. Kurt is going to get us started on that. Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you all doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
So basically, we got to see you guys just, 2 weeks ago, get to tour the Lake Belton High School.
Yes, thank you for doing that. That was awesome.
I'm glad you're all able to get out there. Basically, just the overall construction photos from the previous time. I was able to get an updated drone photo, and so kind of walking through the site now is the construction has, as you saw, has moved from the classroom wings to the admin and library area on the inside. On the exterior, they're working on the curbs and gutters, the sidewalks, and they're bringing in topsoil so that they can get ready for the landscaping and everything once they get all the curbs and gutters done. And after that, they'll get into the roads and the base and get that ready for the spring. So basically, looking at the exterior, just wanted to highlight the metal panel installation that continues around the building. The main entrance coming in for the students, then we have the student entrance with the LBHS wall, which they are beginning production on the LBHS symbols that'll be on that side. And then just kind of looking back at the student entrance in black box. The exterior is probably in the neighborhood of 93% complete. They really expect to be able to wrap that up in the next month or two. Looking on the inside, we've got the classroom wing that is on the east side of the lower level where they had all the ceiling grids installed. They've done some of the hard lid soffits to break up the long hallway. And then looking at the dining commons in the upper right-hand corner, basically they've got the painting of the gyp up there, and they've already have the plywood framed on the, I'll call them the benches and the seating areas at the upper level where they'll be able to sit and have their lunch and look over the lower dining commons. And then just kind of look at the kitchen. We didn't actually walk into the production kitchen, but all the equipment's in there. They're making all the final connections and tie-ins at this time. Looking at some of the classroom items, we just want to highlight the wood portal that is between the main hall and each of the classroom wings. The typical classroom with the casework that has been installed. And then I don't think we got a chance to see it, was at each of the classroom areas, we have these perforated stairs with terrazzo treads that are overlooking the exterior that go from the first to second floor, along with some interior stairs that are in the building. And that's this time. From the last one, we don't have any changes to present to you. I will expect that this next time we will have one minor change that we'll update you all with. Are there any questions on the high school at this time? Moving on to the Belton Orchestra edition. Overall photos from previous where they took down the canopy, started doing all the concrete, had the steel and the CMU up. Since then, we've got the structural deck is up there. They've done the blocking on the roof, getting ready for the installation of the roof, hopefully this week if the weather is permitting. On the exterior side, they have insulated the entire exterior minus a 2-foot strip over those top little tiny windows. And then in the top right corner, we have that mock-up wall of the two different bricks that are being used that kind of mimic the color of the tilt-up walls that there are. The lighter one is the main facade, and then there's an accent band, which is that darker brick that is to, and I'm going to, on the top right image, you can kind of see where there's some rain lines and then there's some vertical ribbing. That's kind of where they have an accent band where the dark brick is going to mimic that on the building. On the inside, they're beginning to do some stud framing, and in the next couple weeks, get the windows on and kind of button everything up except for the brick veneer, which I think arrives in the next couple days, and they'll start that on the exterior. First of the year, we'll be moving on to the inside of the building. Are there any questions on this project? All right, thank you.
Sorry, next item on our agenda, we'll have a policy committee report for our own Manuel Kozer. He'll talk to us about board operating procedures and board policy manual review.
Am I going or is Ty going? Am I first?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Montgomery's not here, and neither is Mr. Floor. Mr. Floor attended our second meeting because I wanted them to chime in on things, but Dr. Battershaw was there, and so was Ms. Tickle, who is out here as well. The main thing that I want you guys to know is that this is a work in progress. We're required annually to review the standard operating procedures of this board. And essentially what the operating procedures are, they govern how we are to interact with the public, how board members are to bring things on the agenda. It governs how meetings are supposed to be posted and whatnot. A lot of the standard operating procedures comport with Texas state law. And we looked at amending the procedures. We looked at adding to the procedures, but we don't have a document in place yet. We're going to have a draft hopefully in about a month or two so that I can share that with everybody on the board. One of the things that we did was we talked about impartiality. Most of what happens up here is we all get to vote. We all have one vote. And to recuse yourself, obviously, if you can't be impartial and you can't be fair in making a decision, you should recuse yourself. And you should do that freely without hesitation. Now, one of the things that we're going to do is there is a code of ethics in our standard operating procedures now. However, there are some other provisions that govern how we're supposed to do things that are scattered out throughout our board, the district policies and procedures. And what we decided to do was to bring some of those together and put them in the standard operating procedures as a group. Now, in my view, what that's going to do is, first of all, it governs how we're supposed to act on this board, how we're supposed to act towards each other. Ty's looking at me. I'm not pointing you out. How we're supposed to interact with the public, and it allows us to police ourselves, if you will. And I think what the goal is, and I was talking to Dr. Batishell about this, the goal is to set a standard operating procedure for this district that we're going to, first of all, be proud to do. Secondly, it's going to address any changes that occur in the future. And thirdly, it will be something that will be set in place for years to come, so not only this board can work with, but boards in the future. Of course, if there's a policy that we change, maybe 2 months from now, we want to take a look at it and change it again. But the point is that we're required to do this annually. And what I want everyone to know is that we're looking at the entire thing. And I think Angela told me there's 950 pages that she has to stroll through. So a lot of those things that we're looking at, first of all, we need to make sure that it's in line with state law, that's the most important thing. And anything that we do change, we're going to present it to TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, and get their blessing on it before we actually enact the policy. So we're doing everything we can to comport with Texas state law, especially in a time when we have a legislative session. There's always changes. One of the things that we did table was the new provision that deals with the public, how much time they have to interact and when we're supposed to interact with the public at these meetings. And I think we're still waiting on a response from TASB as it relates to that. Is that right, Angela?
Well, our updates here, and we'll be talking about it next.
Okay, all right. The point is that we've tabled that because there has been some change in state law as it relates to that. So hopefully we'll have something in the future that will address that, and we'll know exactly how we're going to deal with that in terms of when the public addresses us and how much time they're going to have to do that. Also, not only are we going to look at the standard operating procedures, but we're going to look at the policy and procedures, the district as a whole, and that's the 950 pages that we're talking about. So we'll take a look at that entire document and hopefully have a draft here for the entire board to look at, so that we can discuss it then and then make a decision as to which policies we're actually going to adopt in terms of the changes and the amendments and the additions that we're going to make to these things. And I think that's about it. Anything else, Dr. Batishell, that we need to?
The 950 pages is part of the TASB 114 update.
Right.
And it is only the legal section. We have not received the local yet, I don't believe. If we have, I don't have it. But so you've got a lot of legal documents. And what Angela and I will do is kind of divide that into sections so that you don't get all of it at one time. You will adopt it at the same time. But we'll use each month to kind of go through pieces of that, the things that are germane to you as a school board.
Now, there's a summary that Dr. Batishell had provided us in our packet. That doesn't tell you exactly what we did and what the discussions were, but the next time, or at least when we have a draft, then we'll be able to discuss it a little bit further next time, or maybe the following month. That's all? Yeah.
All righty, so that was board operating procedures and board policy. Awesome. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is Michelle Box. She's going to talk to us and give us a demographic update for the fall. Welcome, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
Doing well.
I like the new location. It looks great. So thank you for having me out again. Again, Michelle Box, Templeton Demographics. I've got a little bit of a new look here, a little bit of a new design for a fall report. Hopefully it still provides you all the great information that we always do. We're going to start off with our enrollment history. So Belton ISD has added about 3,000 students in the last 10 years roughly. This fall we added just over 300 students for a growth rate of about 2.6%. That yellow box is going to be your largest grade, not green box is going to be your second largest grade. So we see that big class moving in from 6th to 7th grade this year. This next slide is going to be your district demographics. So we're just showing you through the 2018-19 school year with TEA data. About a third of your students are Hispanic, about half are white, and about 45% of your students are economically disadvantaged. And that is coded as free and reduced lunch students. That's a state coding. And we've seen that decline slightly in the last couple years, but overall maintained kind of that 46-45%. This is diving into your annual enrollment change. So this is really focusing in on our projections and how your enrollment came in based on our projections. That pink box in the middle there is actually our forecast for you this year. So you came in a little bit under our forecast, about 60 students under our forecast. And most of that was at the kind of 1st through 4th grade. We actually saw some slightly lower cohorts in the 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade years based on some of your historical cohorts. Cohorts are students, 2nd graders becoming 3rd graders, 3rd graders becoming 4th graders. That's that box at the bottom there. Anything over 1 represents a growth cohort above 100%. Anything below 1 would be a negative cohort. We also did see a pretty strong growth at kindergarten class and a historically high cohort in 10th grade. But overall, we are watching that elementary cohort coming in a little low. We do expect it to bounce back. That's probably a little bit of a 1-year dip. Overall economic conditions in Clean Temple MSA continue to remain really strong. 2.2% job growth rate through September. That's much higher than the national average at 1.2%. Unemployment rate still well within full employment at 3%. In the city of Temple, still down about 0.5% from where we were last year. Overall home sales are still increasing over 500 units over where we were last year. So still a strong job growth, really low unemployment rate, and strong annual home sales that we expect that to continue for the foreseeable future. This is looking at the state of Texas overall public education. So in 2018-19, the state enrolled 5.4 million students in both traditional public schools and charter schools across the state. That's a growth of about 32,000 students from where we were last year. I want to point out that enrollment change, though. Between 2007 and about 2014, the state was adding 80,000 students a year. That's dropped all the way down to about 30,000 students. That decline has almost exclusively been at kindergarten. It's just a decline in birth rates since about the recession, since 2008, 2009. People my age aren't having kids, or if they are, they're having fewer and they're having them later. So we've seen that result in much smaller kindergarten classes across the state. You can also see on that map just the growth corridor of 35. You can literally see the line of 35 connecting DFW, Central Texas, all the way down into San Antonio, and all the growth that's occurring on that corridor. So this remains a really prime real estate for new homes and population growth. In Region 12 specifically, you've added 1,500 students in the last 5 years. That makes you the 2nd fastest growing district in all of Region 12, just behind Killeen ISD. So your district demographics, we did go ahead and include this. We're looking forward to Census 2020 already. I know it's fast approaching. So this is kind of a quick look on where you sit compared to the 2010 census at this time. This is a kind of rough estimate. But in 2019, we think your population is sitting right at just under 60,000 people. That's up almost 30% from the 2010 census. Your population below age 19, so kind of roughly your school age population, has grown about 20% in that time. So it's not quite keeping pace with that overall population. Again, declining birth rates, smaller families, but we still see, I mean, that's a pretty significant jump in the population under 19 within this district. Total households have increased about 28% to over 20,000 households in the district, and the median household income has increased about 22%. So strong job growth and that low unemployment's really driven up that median household income. So now we're going to dive into your housing market. So this first one's going to be just the city of Belton specifically. Year-to-date sales are basically flat through September of 2019. That average price and median price now sit well above $200,000. I know when I first started coming here, I think it was sitting at 185, 190. We're now seeing an average price in the city of Belton over $210,000, median price over $220,000. The number of listings and the the existing home inventory, continue to decline. The supply is just not keeping pace. That flattening in sales is more a supply problem than it is a demand problem. Existing home inventory is sitting at about 3 months supply. We want to see that closer to 4 to 5 months supply to be a truly healthy, balanced market. So that supply is still very limited. Across to the city of Temple, and this is the entire city of Temple, not just within the district, but overall city of Temple year-to-date sales have increased a little bit more than Belton's seen. Average price, median price, a little bit more stable, but sitting below $200,000. Average price in the city of Temple about $180,000, median price about $170,000. But again, even in the city of Temple, listings and inventory still down from where they should be and where they're needed for that demand. So this is in specifically your district, the Belton ISD housing activity. These are total sales by transaction type. So back in 2010, you had about 1,200 home sales. About 260 of those are new homes, 700 were existing home sales, and about 18% were REO or foreclosure sales. So that's what we would call distressed property sales. Fast forward to 2018, those new home sales have more than doubled. Existing home sales have more than doubled. And you've now had over 2,000 homes sold within your district. So a lot more turnover, a lot more housing activity. And those distressed property sales have declined to about 4% of the market. So it's a much healthier level in the market. We are on pace this year in 2019 to exceed the number of home sales you saw in 2018. So we're still seeing that increase in the housing market. This is your district housing overview. So those green polygons are going to be your actively home building subdivisions. The yellow polygons are going to be future subdivisions that we're tracking across the district. So in all of those polys, we see about 1,900 lots that are available to build on right now. That's streets in, utilities in, ready to put a house on tomorrow. So you have almost 2,000 lots that are available to build on across the district. And more than 5,500 future lots that are still in the planning stages. A couple changes to note since I was here last. Up in the north part of the High Point Elementary Zone, the enclave at Lake Belton has 34 proposed futures. You can see just south of 36 there, kind of off the lake. We would expect those to be kind of a custom home build, probably not yielding as many students, but that is a future subdivision that's been proposed. Mesa Ridge, right next to Northgate, has started platting, so that's going to be moving a little bit faster than anticipated. That's one that we've had on the books for a while, but it is actually starting to move forward at this time. That's in the Tarver Elementary Zone. In the Pirtle Elementary Zone, the new First Baptist Temple site has proposed 260 future lots and an additional multifamily site. That multifamily at this time is proposed to be age restricted, so we do not expect any students out of that. But that's something we're going to continue to watch and make sure that that doesn't change into non-age restricted units. Moving a little bit south in the Sparta zone, Dawson Ridge has begun groundwork. That's the yellow polygon in Sparta. And the Circle C Ranch, has their first homes under construction. So that's become active as well. Down in Miller Heights, the Hubbard Branch subdivision has groundwork underway on about 170 lots right now. They're going to be delivering their first set of 90 by early 2020. So we should have streets going in and getting ready in Hubbard Branch very quickly. So this is your new home activity forecast. I've actually forecasted how many homes we expect to build by those small planning areas across your district over the next 5 years. So this year, before the school year started, you'd built kind of just right at 700 new homes. We expect that to jump up to about 850 by next year. That's with the inclusion of the reserve at Pea Ridge, which has gotten started this spring. They've gotten about 60 homes started, so they've really increased activity, as well as Hubbard Branch and the Lake Point Terrace that are going to be coming online before the next school year. So we expect you to start building about 800 homes a year, 800 to 900 homes a year for the next 3 to 5 years. So diving into the map to see specifically where those homes are going to be built. So again, those are the next 5 years, the number of homes that we expect to build by those small planning areas that we break your district into. You can see a couple areas kind of jump off the map. The darker the color, the more units being built. That darkest blue is more than 300 homes being built in the next 5 years within that area. So we really focused in on that Tarver elementary zone. Tarver is expected to add more than 1,600 homes in the next 5 years, followed by Chisholm Trail with over 1,000, largely due to that Three Creeks development in Chisholm that is expected to continue their pace of about 100 to 150 homes a year. And then Charter Oak, the new Charter Oak elementary zone, is forecasted to add almost 1,000 homes in the next 5 years. So really strong home building numbers in those kind of three major elementary zones across the district. This next map is going to be your student density. So these are based off of our geocoded students. We've conducted your new student geocode with this fall list of students. We tracked about 450 students that reside outside of the district. Keep in mind that can include teachers or administration students as well. So that represents about 4% of your overall student population. Of those students that live outside the district, of those 450, about half are coming from the city of Temple. So you're definitely pulling more students from the city of Temple, from Temple ISD, than some of your neighbors. And then a couple kind of fun facts on the breakdown that we saw. Of the students that reside within your district, 36% reside within Temple city limits, 31% reside within Belton city limits, and about 6% reside in the city of Morgan's Point Resort. This is your overall district yields based off of that student geocode. So right now, across the district, your average single-family home is yielding about 0.61. So for every 10 homes in your district, there's 6 students coming out of them. And that's been very steady over the last 4 years, that single-family yield. I will say that that's fairly unusual for a lot of the clients that we work with to have maintained that single-family yield that strong, especially building as many homes as you are. That means that your new homes coming online are bringing a lot of kids, and people are staying here with their children to make sure that they're in Belton ISD schools. So that's definitely a testament to what you guys are doing here. 0.6 is definitely a stronger yield than we see in most suburban districts. Typically 0.5 is average. Multifamily yield is sitting just below 0.3 right now, about a 0.29. That has actually declined in recent years. That's mostly due to some of those newer luxury apartments coming online and just not having many students in them. So that's dropped the overall district yield in multifamily complexes. This is a map of your yield by active subdivision. So I looked at all of the subdivisions that are currently building homes that have at least 50 homes occupied to try to get a cleaner yield, and seeing how many students are coming out of them. So kind of comparing portions of your district and how they're yielding. Again, you can see Tarver is actually sitting as one of the higher yielding areas, with Lake Point and Northgate yielding roughly 0.8, 0.6 to 0.8 students per house. So very high yields out of the Tarver elementary zone. Also some higher yields out of Lakewood and Sparta. Chisholm Trail, that Three Creeks, is yielding about 0.5 students per house. And there's some subdivisions in the south part of Charter Oak, south of 35, that are yielding less than 0.4. So a little bit lower than average yield. That's based on the product and the price point of those homes being built. Next slide is going to be your multifamily yield. So each of those dots represents an apartment or multifamily complex within the district. So we tracked 760 students that live in about 2,600 multifamily units across the district. And these do include manufactured home communities as well. So the average apartment yield, so that would be apartment, duplexes, or townhomes, is about 0.25. And the average manufactured home community yield is about a 0.53. And that's pretty standard to see that difference between those two types of communities. Again, some of your newer luxury apartment complexes with market rate complexes are just not yielding as many students. This bar graph is your newcomers and leavers. So this is a definition we use. Newcomers are any students that were not in your geocode last year, any student IDs that we did not see last year that are now in your new geocode, but we exclude any EE, pre-K, or kindergarten students. We assume that those are going to be new students to the district. And leavers are any students that had a student ID in last year's file that are missing from this year's file. And we exclude graduating seniors. So it's kind of a K through 11 look at any students that may have left the district, just due to kind of natural mobility between school years. So this year, we had about 1,500 newcomers into the district and about 1,300 leavers. So we're still a positive of 130 students net gain there. which is, again, not typically what you would see. We usually see more leavers than newcomers, especially in slower growth districts. But you guys being fast growth, adding so many homes, do have more new students coming in than are leaving. This is your kindergarten enrollment versus district births. This is something we wanted to dive into. We did say again that your kindergarten enrollment had a pretty strong cohort this year, had about 830 kindergarten students this year. So what we do is we look at the number of births within your district and then compare that to 5 years later what your kindergarten class is. So back in 2014, you had 1,029 births within your district. That translated into this year's kindergarten class of 836. What I want to point out here is next year. So in 2015, the number of births within the district jumped pretty significantly to over 1,100 births. That's why we're forecasting more than 900 kindergarten students next year. That is quite a significant jump at kindergarten, but based off of these births, we've seen a really strong correlation in this ratio. We do feel confident that you are going to see a big increase in kindergarten class next year because of that jump in the birth rates. Going forward, the number of births does decline a little bit and kind of levels off back to normal after that really big jump in 2015. You can see, though, we are holding your kindergarten class above 900 students. A lot of that is because the new homes coming in, we think that that's going to balance some of the decline in the birth rates, and that you will continue to see kindergarten increases because you're going to be building more than, again, 800 to 900 homes a year. So that gets us into our 10-year forecast by grade level. Again, I do want to point out that large 7th grade class. We're going to see the impact on those as they move into 8th and 9th grade. Basically, it's kind of great timing for your new middle school and your new high school next year because you've got some really big classes coming in to those grades. So in the next 5 years, we think you could add about 2,000 students for a 2024 enrollment of 14,226. And then in the next 10 years, we think you could add about 3,800 students for a 2029 enrollment of over 16,000 students. What we definitely want to keep an eye on is that 14,000 number. That's what we want to keep in mind for planning and for facility purposes. With the new elementary school that came online this year, your new middle school and your new high school, we feel pretty confident that you're going to be covered for that 14,000 number. This is your 10-year forecast by elementary school. A couple things, most of this really will look quite similar to what we showed you in the spring after those new boundaries were adopted. A couple kind of changes or differences, but overall mostly very similar. Chisholm Trail did come in a little higher than our forecast, so we're going to keep an eye on that capacity number. We think it could exceed capacity by about 2022 at this point, because again, that kindergarten class has come in a little bit bigger than we expected. High Point Elementary came in a little bit under our forecast, so that does look a little bit lower. It's dipping now just below 600 students, but we expect that to kind of remain at that 600 number, relatively flat. Tarver Elementary is another one that we're definitely watching. You know, we just talked about a couple of the new subdivisions coming in on Tarver, and as well as the higher yields that we're seeing in the Tarver Elementary zone. They did exceed our forecast a little bit this year, so we're keeping an eye on that Tarver zone. At this point, we think it'll enroll more than 800 students by about 2023. So that's the next zone that we're going to be potentially watching. Overall, we think you could add about 140 elementary students next fall and enroll more than 5,800. The secondary level, Lake Belton came in a little bit under our forecast, but we do expect that to continue to grow with the housing growth in that zone. Belton Middle School, we're still forecasting to enroll more than 750 students when it opens this next fall. And Lake Belton High School should enroll more than 830 students. That is with that 9th and 10th grade only. We show that grade being added a year. So that'll put Belton High School down to about 2,300 students, excluding the New Tech High School next fall. You can see kind of those big classes working their way through with that 115 growth next year at middle school, and then that drop the year after, that negative 49. We're not losing middle school students, that's simply that really big 7th grade class moving into 9th grade. So subsequently, you can see in 2021, that really big 250 kid jump at high school. So again, that timing of that new high school was perfect for that big class moving its way in. So we did go ahead and map the district-owned land that we have at this point. So there's 4 sites that the district still owns. Property in Northgate, just kind of off of P Ridge Road and access through the Northgate subdivision. That's a 14-acre site. On 2nd Avenue, it's actually the site of the Ag Barn right now, just north of the 2nd Avenue and east of Loop 121. That's a 25-acre site. Just south on Loop 21 off of Shanklin, I think I'm saying that right, road, you actually have 108 acres on that site. And there is a additional site in the Hubbard Branch subdivision that, again, should have roadway access by early 2020, just off of the road there. That's a 14-acre site. So those are 4 school sites that you guys currently have available to you. This is just our summary slide. Again, we expect you to enroll about 14,000 students in the next 5 years. Large amount of your growth is due to your single-family housing, yielding significant number of students, especially in the northern part of the district. Tarboro Elementary is expected to add the most new residential units over the next 5 years. And we think that the birth rates will cause a pretty high kindergarten class this coming fall, but will then kind of level off back to a normal growth rate after that. Are there any questions I can answer, or any additional information you'll need from us?
Don't believe so.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that update.
Absolutely. As always, please reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you.
I want to add Facilities Committee. This is going to be coming to you very, very, very soon. And you have received a packet today. Connie has sent that out to you. And I gave you the sheet of paper that showed your housing expansions and where your school sites are, so you can kind of do a one-on-one correlation of whether those are in your growth areas or whether you need to purchase additional land at some point in time. So just be ready. This is going to be a very interesting discussion.
The next item on our agenda is recognitions. Are we about ready for that? Not yet. Okay, well, we'll just move on to the next item, which is consent agenda. Does any member of the board have any item they'd like to have pulled for further discussion? No? The recommendation is that we approve it as presented. Is there a motion to approve? Ty Taggart, thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Janet Lee, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report next then.
In your packet, I've highlighted the key points for this one. We are working on records retention right now, and a records retention schedule, and that sounds really boring, and it is. It sounds boring, and it really is boring, but it's really important. We have a lot of boxes, and we're trying to digitalize as much of that as possible. So all the departments are working through that. Upcoming board training is listed there if you're interested. Leadership lunch, it was great. We had about 30 people, leaders across Belton and Temple areas. I think it will expand next time. Jeff, thank you for attending. Appreciate it. Suzanne, we hope to catch you next time.
Absolutely.
There were 7 topics or categories that came up. Those are listed in your packet. And just for the general public, I will tell you those categories, and these are not in any particular order. 1 was collaboration between state and local government entities, including the sharing of resources. Another one was the mental health homeless. 3rd one was safety, security, CPS case increases. Number 4 was the upcoming census. Number 5, growth and infrastructure. Number 6, talent attraction and employability with the low unemployment rate. That's a real concern for all the entities. And then number 7 was transportation. Underneath human resources, superintendent search process, the community survey went out. And Elizabeth, how many respondents did we have? 150. So they responded to that survey. Superintendent's appraisal process, I gave you some information based upon your governance digest that just came out, and use that as you so choose. Head football coach positions, the deadline is December the 1st of 2019. We'll be meeting soon under Todd's leadership, and we'll determine what our candidate pool is and whether or not we've got enough good candidates to go on and begin interviewing, or whether we wish to extend that process. Posting of positions, we'll have a whole lot of positions that are open within the next 2 months. Underneath finance and operations, facilities committee, new PAC lighting. Our fine arts people are thrilled about that one. You will begin noticing renovation of the central office vestibule.
Beef office is just one piece of that, but that needs to be a secured entranceway, and so we now are working with an architect on developing plans for that. I want to thank the front office staff for giving input on that project. Templeton demographics you heard this evening. In 2020, 2021 school calendar, you'll probably be seeing that at your January school board meeting. The DWIC has been meeting on that. The unofficial spring break for most of our colleges is for 2021 is March 15th through the 19th. That sounds a long way away, but actually that's not that far. Student Services, Senate Bill 11, Ms. Teakle met with Mike Morgan and myself on the changes to that, and I'm thrilled to say Belton ISD is way ahead of the ballgame on that one. We are installing EpiPens in all of our nurses' stations. And Smart Tag is up and running. We've had a few surprises, but it's new, so that kind of comes with it. And then Deanna and her department are working on Principal's Leadership Matrix because our whole role is growth. Students should grow, staff should grow, board should grow, everyone should always grow. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for that very thorough report. That's awesome.
I forgot, the upcoming events that was attached to your superintendent's report. And again, we highlighted the things that we thought that you may have interest in.
Thank you. Next item, we'll just go ahead and move on to human resources. Todd will talk to us about the employment of administrative employees.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good
So tonight I
evening.
have the recommendation to, or I have a recommendation to approve Stacy Saveska as the Belton Middle School principal. Everybody knows Stacy. We hired her in July for Director of Student Services, and she's done a fantastic job in that role. And we look forward to working with her in the Belton Middle School position. She has brought a lot of great stuff to the position of Director of Student Services, and we're really, really excited for her. And we asked her to provide a plan of what she would do at Belton Middle School, and the plan was tremendous. And so she did a really good job in the interview, and we are recommending her tonight for that position. So I think she's probably got, do you have your family with you too? Yeah?
They're all over there. Well, welcome. We'll go ahead and do a photo op and, aw, beautiful family. Yes. Everybody's in red. Good deal. Thank you. They're going to lead you to your seat. Thank you so much. All right, Todd. Do you have anything else? Okay. So what we need to do now that we've taken this lovely photo is vote on it. So the recommendation is to approve as recommended. Is there a motion on that? Mr. Norwood, is there a second? Mr. Taggart, all in favor, please raise your hand. It's official. Welcome. Awesome. We're just going to plod right along and go ahead and talk to Dr. Deanna Smith. She's going to talk to us about new courses for 2020.
I am. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll let that get that to the right screen. I'm coming tonight to discuss with you a proposal for new courses. So sometimes we do place the request for new courses in consent. However, when there's some changes and I want to talk through those, then we move it to a presentation. So in the past it was there. We're looking tonight at requests for approval for courses at the middle school and high school level. So I'll begin with the middle school. So just as a little bit of a refresher, if you're in our middle schools, you take 7 courses a year, an English, a science, a social studies, a math. You take PE, 2 years, typically in 6th and 7th grade, and then should you want to stay, you can take that also in 8th. A fine art elective, and then multimedia is one of the required courses for 6th grade. Last year, we began looking at our electives, and it's been a request from our middle school principals over the past several years that we needed to look at adding more middle school classes. We looked at it last year, but then we knew that we would be bringing on a 4th middle school, so we wanted to kind of see how that would pan out. We currently, in our electives, offer the standard fine arts courses. We offer a gadgets and gizmos in 6th grade paired with, or 7th grade paired with conversational Spanish, multimedia 1 and 2, and Avid. And then we have students that take swim and tennis off-site. We offer Art 1 for high school credit and Spanish 1 for high school credit. It's not an elective, but just for discussion purposes, we also offer Algebra 1 as a high school credit. So we currently have 3 courses that you can get high school credit in middle school. So as we were studying this, we wanted to look first at aligning our fine arts courses in 7th grade to be a full year. The TEKS had changed, and we met with our fine arts teachers last year. This was a request that they had, but we did decide at that time we would wait until the 4th middle school came on. We need to increase our elective offerings. We're just really not offering enough. And when I've studied other middle schools and districts in the area, one of the areas that we're short in is computer science. So that's why we're adding one of those courses. We wanted to, so that align this better with other districts, provide more choices. And then I mentioned that we have a requirement by the state that all middle schools take one or earn one fine art elective. We would like to just accomplish that in 6th grade. In order to progress in our fine arts programs, it does help if you have had that 6th grade course to get you kind of in that trajectory through high school. And so we'd like to really kind of make that a requirement. And so by doing so, we would shift our art middle school 1 and theater arts to full year courses instead of being paired. And we've talked with our fine arts teachers. They're very excited about that. It gives a full year of those courses. We would offer a coding and robotics course. Many other districts we found are offering this or something similar. There's a new legislative change, and so by adding this course, it would follow the tech apps TEKS, and we would actually receive weighted funding in middle school for kids in 7th or 8th grade who take that. This is a new one. We're going to add foundations of dance. I've been working with our high school dance instructor. This is common. Many other districts in the area are offering dance. Some are offering it 6th, 7th, and 8th. We'd like to start with 7th and 8th grade. And talking with our dance instructor, we're going to use, we would plan to use our high school dance. We have it currently at high schools. We typically have a director, an assistant director, and then we're adding a corps for the band, and so color guard. And so they would actually work together to cover dance programs, and we believe it would strengthen both programs, both dance and color guard at the high school level, and then offer journalism and yearbook. Then at high school's a little different. We have 22 credits plus an endorsement, so it typically works out to about 26 credits for high school. We currently offer recommend that you follow 4 years of math, science, and social studies. 4 years of English is required, but we still like to keep kids on a traditional. But our changes at the high school level are focused primarily in the area of CTE with programs of study. There's been some significant work at the state level in programs of study, and their focus is on getting kids prepared for high demand, high wage jobs and careers in Texas. So with this, I gave you an example, and there was a link in the packet. This is actually a template that came out from the state. These go into effect for the 2021 school year. And I'm really proud of the work in Belton because we are actually planning on implementing all of the programs of study as choice options. This actual sheet will be, along with the other 47 accompanying pages, will be in the course catalog. This is, like I said, a design from the state. So in this, what their state is doing is you'll see in the top right-hand corner, the courses, those are the actual high school courses under this degree plan. And I just picked one program of study. I chose animal science, where it indicates all the courses that are offered in Belton. So you'll see your 4-level courses. From there, you'll drop down to the bottom left and you'll see the Belton ISD industry-based certifications that we offer. They'll also have other certifications where we may not offer, but that a student could obtain, some straight out of high school in the column labeled certificate or license, others an associate's degree, bachelor's, or master's. In those columns, those were designed by the state. So those are things that the state has identified in this strand. The state also included in this occupations for each of those areas, along with a standard or average salary, the percent of growth in those areas, and the available jobs currently in the Texas market. And so it really provides students and parents with some job-related information connected to the state of Texas. And then the next page would be specifically regarding the Belton ISD courses. And so we outline here the course names, the service IDs or number of credits, any prerequisites. Prerequisites are determined by the state, so we follow only what the state requires, and then the grade level in which those courses are offered. With that, we are proposing the addition of 14 new courses. We do not expect all 14 courses to make. However, we did need to complete all of those programs of study so we could offer them and we could gauge student interest. And so we typically do not allow a course to make unless there are at least 15 students interested in that course. But in working with our teachers, this will allow us to kind of better gauge what students are interested in, and then our counselors can also use these programs of study when they're advising kids, so they can talk about where they can go after high school, what the job market looks like, and the salary ranges in this. I think our kids will be they're often attracted to the salary ranges. How much am I going to make if I do this? And so they can see all the requirements within that. And then, so we're adding those, we're proposing the addition of those 14 courses. And then with advanced academics, there are some changes there as well. So the College Board is a company we've used for years. The College Board is changing. In the past, they have allowed school districts to use the name pre-AP for courses without any fee, and then along with that, you could offer AP courses. The College Board, beginning in the fall of 2022, will require you to pay in order to offer a pre-AP course, and that's about $6,000 per course for the district, so it's not at the campus level. We are looking at the curriculum. We're reviewing it closely. There could be an interest in us wanting to purchase the curriculum that they produce for pre-AP courses so that we can ensure that they align with the AP courses, because we are using College Board curriculum for that. However, there are other courses where there's really not a tight aligned connection. For instance, we would be interested in those courses for those high school courses listed, Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, Biology, Chemistry, and World History. But they don't cover things like 6th grade English, 7th grade pre-AP English. And so what we are doing or proposing is that, and just wanted to make you aware, is that we rename those courses to advanced. Theoretically, they'll work the same. They'll still have the same weighted point value. If there's not a weighting necessarily in middle school, but it'd still be a differentiation for grades, and then same with high school. We would follow the weighting. We'll need to ultimately amend EIC local, but we usually do that annually anyway. But we wanted to go ahead and propose that. That is in line what other districts are doing, and so we want to get that in play. And we've been working with other districts. Some are calling them honors. Some are calling them advanced. When we talk to our teachers, advanced seems to be a name that worked better. And so with that, I have a list of the specific courses in the packet, along with the credit value, years in sequence, class ranking, endorsement strand, and description for our CTE courses, I didn't include the name changes, that's just procedural, and then the description for our middle school courses.
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
The dance and color guard on the middle school level, will it be considered athletics?
So I'm really glad you asked that. It's actually going to be called Foundations of Dance. It will serve as a PE credit, but not considered athletics. It's a PE credit. They will not be a competitive team. So it's not a team. They don't go to competitions. It's not the dance team or the color guard. It's the Foundations of Dance course to help you try out better once you get to your high school level.
Being on the facilities committee, we've talked a lot about the CTE facilities needing upgrading, needing some work. So adding these, have we taken that into consideration? And do you have a list of things that maybe we need to look at?
Not that would be outside the scope of what in general we need to look at for CTE courses. These won't take any specialized requirements for facility.
Any other questions, board? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and the recommendation before us, board, is to approve the proposed courses as listed. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Taggart, is there a second? Mr. Alcozer, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause right here for just a
Do you want
second.
me to
I
pause
believe
and-
we're ready for recognitions. Is that what I'm seeing here? We will come right back to you.
Good evening. Rotary Educators of the Month and of the
Board,
Quarter.
we're going to go down
And so
and take
Christina
pictures.
Hennig, come on up, and her principal, Ms. McMurtry from Chisholm Trail.
We're all going. Whole fam's coming.
Yeah, so Christina's being recognized by the Belton Rotary Club for her service to Belton ISD, and she's a 5th grade teacher at Chisholm Trail Elementary. She is in her 21st year in education and her 15th with Belton ISD. Ms. Hennig is highly committed to students, parents, and her colleagues. She demonstrates teamwork and utilizes student data to provide students individualized instruction. She takes personal approach to teaching by building relationships, and she provides her kids with social and emotional support. Her effort and commitment to her students is evident as they, in return, give her their best effort. She's a leader on campus, often sharing her knowledge and her ideas with others for the betterment of kids. And Elizabeth McMurtry, principal, stated, Christina goes above and beyond to ensure students give her the very best every single day. She is multifaceted in her approach to teaching and seeks to learn and grow alongside her students. So congratulations. All right, and next up we have Amy Jordan. She's being recognized by the Temple Rotary Club. Congratulations. And Amy, if you'd come on up, and her principal, Brooke Itz. And Amy is in her 20th year in education, all with Belton ISD. While serving students at Tarver, Ms. Jordan also helps with dyslexia assessments when the need arises within the district. She serves kids as the dyslexia teacher at Tarver. She views all her students as her own, not just those at Tarver. Her knowledge and expertise within her field not only support students, but also serve other teachers and staff. Amy exudes compassion, positivity, and a can-do attitude. She is focused on ensuring her students' needs are met while also graciously demonstrating a willingness to help anyone who is in need. Brooke Itz, principal, stated, Amy embodies the educational idea that when we grow, our students succeed. It gives me great pride to nominate an educator so willing to go above and beyond to meet the needs of all students. Congratulations, Amy.
I just want to thank the recipients. I mean, that's awesome that you all have so many years amongst you. The fact that you do have so many years, that's just testament to your love for what you do and for the kids in the community. So thank you so much for doing what you do. We're going to get right back on target here and continue talking to Dr. Love Smith. Now she's going to talk to us about targeted improvement plan. She and Ms. Vicki Dean.
That's right. We are going to talk with you about targeted improvement. And so, as you may know, of course, this was the first year that our schools, based on last year's ratings, received an A through F rating. And so once schools received that rating, schools were identified to be in need of targeted support. Originally, the legislation planned that schools that had an overall rating of a D or an F would be identified for target improvement. However, when the legislation was written, it said a D in a domain, not overall. And so if you may recall, there are 3 domains. You get a letter rating for each domain, and then you receive an overall rating. As a result of that, 2,383 schools across Texas were identified as targeted improvement schools, resulting in roughly about 29 to 30% of the schools overall in the state. So that demographic played out as well in Belton ISD, and we had 5 schools that were rated and identified as targeted improvement. According to the state system, we also have 1 school, Leon Heights, that was identified under the federal guidelines, and I don't have those numbers statewide. So as a result, the state came out with interventions for how you would support each of these schools, and you can see that chart. And all this came out about September, after all of the ratings were in and school was already underway for the next school year. So we fall in the first column, and we have Southwest is a first year overall D, and then we have Chisholm Trail, Miller Heights, South Belton Middle, and Lake Belton Middle that had a domain of a D, and then Leon Heights was identified as additionally targeted support because of federal guidelines, and additionally targeted support is more of a warning before you're targeted, so the labels are very confusing. As a result of that, we needed to identify a district coordinator of school improvement, and we had already made that decision that Vicki would serve to be the first-hand support. We changed some of her duties so that she could give 100% to these campuses and meet with them regularly and support them and make sure they had that immediate contact. They also needed to develop a targeted school improvement plan. All of the campuses, with the exception of Southwest, were able to develop that plan and place it in their campus improvement plan. So we just updated their campus improvement plans. Southwest, however, did need to follow the state's template, and that was presented in your board. And I do want to make sure you know this is to be in compliance with the state. This in no way encompasses everything we've done or are doing with these schools to support them. One of the things that came from this is that the state developed a framework. Vicki and I both have worked with the state in their Division of School Improvement for a decade. This is the best work, I will say, to come out of the state. It's thoughtful, and I believe it's helpful. What they did is they looked in turn at the research behind what makes effective schools, and they developed a framework. It's online. It's at the Texas Effective Schools Framework. And you can see that link there. We actually believe the work in this to be so good that we have started going through it with all of our campus principals, because if the goal is to have effective schools, and it is, then we want to study not only with those that are struggling, but with everyone, what makes your school effective. And so we're using that work with our principals. There are 5 what the state calls prioritized levers around this work. And so the state's taken what makes for an effective school, and they've put it in these 5 categories: having strong leadership and planning, effective, well-supported teachers, high-quality curriculum, effective instruction, and a positive school culture. And on that website, and what we go through with our principals, is all of the different attributes that lead towards that work and things to have in place to run effective schools. Some of the work in this that we found to also be of high interest is a district commitment. And so with each of these areas, there's probably 8 to 10 district commitments that they, and the premise is that districts get behind these schools. Schools can't do it on their own. We have to support them as a district. And so we've highlighted, I chose one from each of those levers because I wanted to give you just an overall understanding of what's in this work, and then to show you in some places I think we're really on the right track. First, we recognize their needs are unique. So schools on this campus come from different situations and their needs are unique to other campuses. Secondly, in the well staff is making it possible for high needs schools to be fully staffed by July 1. I want to thank our HR department. We started doing that about 2 years ago, and they are very committed. They hire teachers early. Now, that's not to say that July 1, after that, people don't resign and we still have vacancies. But before July 1, our goal is to have it fully staffed. And so the HR department started hiring teachers early so that the moment we had a vacancy, we'd be ready to fill it with a high-quality candidate. There is a difference in a candidate that you get in February or March versus sometimes someone you find in August that's still looking for, and it's not to say every time, but there is a magic to that July 1 number. That the district ensures that campuses and buildings are well-maintained, safe, and conducive to learning. So all of that work that you all did, approving those facilities, is connected to this type of work. And not only do we see it, but the state sees it, and they identified that as a district commitment. And then to have a viable curriculum, we continue to have a scope and sequence, and we develop that with our teachers. And then a commitment to ensure campuses have data that they can disaggregate within 2 days. Our teachers actually receive that data the moment students finish taking the test and they scan it in. All the data is live, and they can immediately begin to dissect it. So, like I said, there's 5 levers. There's probably 8 to 10 commitments per lever, but wanted you all to just know that those strategies, when we talk about them, are connected to this greater work. So what we decided to do tonight was to just kind of show you where we're focusing on each of these levers. It doesn't mean to say that we weren't doing this work prior to the state, but we're doing it with intentionality and making sure that we're, it's not just in practice, but that it's also written down. And so with Belton ISD, we're continuing on strong school leadership planning, like I said, going through this work with all of our principals, effective well teachers, those HR practices for hiring early, any kind of incentives we put in to get teachers, making sure they have strong professional development, and then continue on with effective instruction, making sure that our scope and sequence is aligned with our assessments, and then using any support we get from state resources. Vicki has done a lot of, like I said, her role has been firsthand. So she's been working individually with principals to develop their work. And so she's going to talk about the work at each of the campuses.
So I'm going to take you kind of through each campus, kind of give you a little bit of background. The first thing that we've done as a team is leading them through doing kind of a comprehensive needs assessment, a deep data dig into their campus, not just looking at overall data, but what does our history look like, how are we performing at the teacher level, and then all the way down to student level data and digging down. So we did that work. So before we even approached which things we needed to work on each campus, we first looked at, okay, what are our needs, and where are our areas of strength, and where are our areas that need to be improved. So hence that, Then each campus principal with their team had to sit and we talked through, based on that data, okay, which one of these levers, because everything had to be aligned to that effective schools framework. And so Leon and their team with Marcy Beck, one of the things, and you will see this one that came up on multiple campuses, is making sure that they had a clear, written, transparent roles for core leadership. Not to say that they didn't have that before, but it wasn't in black and white. You know how sometimes we think it's understood, but making sure as a team that we sit down, clearly think about that. What's my responsibility? What's the assistant principal's responsibility? What's the instructional coach's responsibilities? What are we looking at when we talk about our counselors? So looking at the whole leadership team. And so when we talk about what are some things we've done with all campuses, we've done that with every campus. And so that was some work that we've done with all 16 campuses. And then the other lever that Marcy and her team want to focus on is they meet weekly to discuss and look at how are our students progressing, and looking and reviewing not only just overall state assessment data, but what does our curriculum assessment data look like, our universal screening data look like, our formative assessment, and then based on that, deciding, okay, what do we need to do now? How do we need to be proactive instead of reactive based on the data, and looking at that, and how can we support our teachers? And then what do they need to reach out to district level people to see of how we can support them with our coordinators and then with the directors. And then looking at, reviewing lesson plans for rigor and providing that feedback. And you might be saying, what, they weren't looking at lesson plans? They were looking at lesson plans, but then really we've been working on, well, how do you provide feedback, and what does that feedback look like, and what does that sound like? In order so that it impacts student success, and that you see improvement in instruction in the classroom. So those are those three levers that Leon looked at. And then when we get to Chisholm, Chisholm, you can see, identifies some of the same things as Leon Heights did. Elizabeth and her team, looking at those roles, meeting weekly. I happened to walk in on their team meeting today and talking about some different things. And we actually, came up with some solutions that their team was able to, they're going to turn around starting tomorrow. And then on her campus, they really want to ensure, because it's a larger campus compared to Leon, and how can I ensure who are my team leads at each grade level and content leads, and to build that capacity on their campus to ensure that that student success and teacher performance and how they perform in the classroom. How can we build upon that, since we have some strong teachers on our campus, and how can we include them in that leadership roles on our campus? And then Miller Heights, when we looked at working with Hope Orsak and her team, is looking at, once again, looking at formative assessment. How do we look at that data to impact instruction? And we've actually, as a group of principals, been meeting and discussing their data, and looking at their data containers, and having that kind of a collaborative discussion together, and creating some protocols on how to have conversations with teachers. And then one of their focuses was on school culture that emphasizes college and career readiness. And you might say, well, at the elementary level, what does that look like? So one of the things they put into place this year was student goal setting. And so students meet with their teacher individually, and they set goals on what they want to do next. So what I'm reading here, where do I want to be reading in a month or so? This is how I'm performing in math. Where do I want to be in a month or so? And so they've been doing that individual student goal setting on that campus. And then looking at lesson plans, but ensuring that we're looking at how do I meet the needs of my struggling student? How am I meeting the needs of my advanced learner who already, when I look at what they already know this material, so what do I need to do differently to meet their needs? So that's what Miller Heights has identified to work on in their plans. And then when we look at South Belton, so now talking about the two middle schools, Kevin and his team, once again, when we talk about the middle school, now your leadership team grows, right? You have some additional assistant principals, you have some counselors, and ensuring, and with a larger staff, having been a middle school principal, lots of times teachers, we assume that they know who's over what, and so that helped for them to add that into their campus plan and into the things that they share with their, who is in charge of what, who's in charge of cheerleaders, not everybody is, right? So that's just some things that we don't necessarily think about. And then his team, along with his instructional coach, has developed a professional development calendar for their teachers through their professional learning communities. And so each week, the times that teachers meet together are focused on different things. So one week it might be on looking at their data. The next week they may be meeting to how do I meet the needs of my EL students. So they've developed a calendar, a yearly calendar for their teachers based on what their needs, that they identified as their needs. And then that campus too is looking specifically asking teachers when they're working with their teachers and writing their lesson plans along with district coordinators in their PLCs, is how can I ensure that there's some differentiation with my lesson plans. And then like Belton with Mr. Hobson and his team, looking at their roles and responsibilities once again, his team identified through their needs assessment is that they needed to kind of revisit their vision and mission when we talk about their environment and to implement some campus climate surveys, which he's already done the first round of that, and then taking that data and what do we need to do with that and what are some adjustments that we can make to ensure that students feel inclusive. Because as you know, at the middle school level, if you feel included, that definitely has a huge impact on how you perform in school. And then the last one is looking at ensuring that our curriculum and our assessments, formative assessments that are done regularly in the classroom, how are we meeting our needs of our students who have disabilities and then our ELs learners. So those are some things that were identified in his needs assessment. And then lastly, Southwest, they had to, like Dr. Love Smith mentioned, we had to complete a template that's based on the state. But even based on the template, we still went through the same process of the comprehensive needs assessment, digging down to the data, identifying what those levers are on that campus, and looking at the roles and responsibilities of leadership, being very being explicit of who's responsible for what, developing a professional development calendar for those teachers, and that lever for along with the campus and district directors have helped with that professional development calendar. And then looking at how do we develop lessons with clear objectives and some formative assessment through that PLC collaboration. So really gone back and kind of revisited lesson plans to ensure that those two things are part of that lesson planning and done through their professional learning communities at that time and working with their instructional coach and their leadership, district leadership. So then what you saw after that is the Southwest Targeted Plan. And so like Dr. Les Smith said, you might see some things and you're like, well, wait a minute, is this all they've been doing? There's a whole lot of other things that are in this, but the targeted plan wants you to align it to the Effective Schools Framework. And so based on those levers that were identified, and what was prioritized, the area of need, you will see they had to identify 3 areas of need. And then we went and looked at, so it's kind of twofold. You have 3 cycles that are in that targeted plan. And so cycle 1 will end at the November, and then we have another cycle through part of the year, and then the last cycle. So each cycle we've identified what those milestones are, or what you would call strategies. And we're about to revisit those milestones of what have we accomplished so far. And we've been I meet with that team once a week, and we revisit all of these. And then based on that, we will adjust what those milestones need to be for cycle 2, and then the same thing for cycle 3. So once we identify them, we don't say, okay, we're not going to revisit them again, so we'll revisit those. And you will see there's 3 cycles of looking at what data do we need to be looking at. So we look at curriculum assessment data. We're also giving interim assessment data, that's those interim tests produced by the state, and then also benchmarks. So you can see there's some holes in that data because we're still giving some assessments this week. And so we'll, after that first cycle, we'll sit with the team and look at it and decide, okay, what milestones do we need to make adjustments for cycle 2? And so that's where we are with our targeted improvement. So here's, like Deanna said, everyone except for Southwest inputted all those levers and what they needed to work on in their campus improvement plan, so they made adjustments in that. And then with Southwest, we had to write an individual plan along with adding some of those things in their campus improvement plan. And all of these are up for approval for tonight.
Awesome. Does the board have any questions or comments? Go ahead.
I guess when all these numbers start coming in, and you guys start breaking everything down, do you feel like this was a fair assessment of our campus to campus, I guess, performance levels? Because obviously we've pinpointed places where we need to work.
Right.
How do you feel like the state test did as far as fair goes? You think it was pretty accurate in where we needed, places that we needed some help to? What do you think?
We will use the state system to continually seek improvement. But when I have studied our districts and I have studied other districts, it is all over the board. I have seen schools with an F in domain 1 and an overall rating of a C. I've seen schools with a D in domain 1 and an overall rating of a D. It is very complex and hard to understand, and depends on many, many variables. And so I think it's a challenging system, but it's the system we have. And so we just continue to work towards improvement.
I will say, though, that I like the communication that you're having, sitting down with the leaders on the campuses and bringing the teachers in and talking. Because I think the more input that the teachers have in the process, the more buy-in there is. I think that's in anything, especially with lesson planning and some of those things. I think when they believe in what they're doing, I think it improves what you said, the instructional things too. So I like the dialogue, the transparency, the openness. I like that part of this process.
Appreciate that. And I want to go back and say, linking back, because I really like those district commitments. What we're trying to communicate to our staff is that this burden is not only on your shoulders, and that we are all doing our part to work together, whether it's a facility repair, the hiring of additional people. I didn't talk about that, but HR's helped to provide some additional positions and at some of these campuses. I mean, it's a district commitment, and everyone's voice matters.
I will say this, with the new system, that they do look at growth. And so for campuses that have more challenging students, they're not penalized as badly as they were under the old system.
Y'all are doing good.
one last thing before y'all approve these. I just want hats off to campus leadership and their teams. The things that I'm not necessarily the easiest person to work with, so the things that we've asked them to do, they've stepped up and are willing to do whatever it takes for their campuses and to do the work. And that's, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, and they've been really willing to roll up their sleeves too. And so I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you ladies for all the work that you all have done, and obviously thank the campus leadership for all the things that they've done. Certainly, we're in it together. We all need to roll up our sleeves, because this is not just an evaluation of a campus. This is an evaluation of this district, and everything that we can do to improve that, it's a win-win. So thank you all for everything that you're doing. And so at this point, if there's another comment, and then we'll vote.
I like the fact that I think Dr. Lovesmith mentioned this, that we're being proactive instead of reactive. We've always taken that approach, though, have we not? I know we're reacting to the ratings now, but can you elaborate more on how we're being proactive with this?
Well, I think the state's taken that different approach by putting that work out there with effective schools. The state was not ready for targeted improvement schools. They had to change their plan, because originally we were told everyone would fill out their template. And I think when they learned there's 2,000 plus schools, they're not prepared for that. It's kind of, but they came out with work on effective schools. And so I think the proactive work is just to continue to work with all principals, not just those that have this, so-called label, but to everyone, to say this is high achieving schools, and this is where we want to be. And that framework that they've come out with is new. There's been lots of frameworks out there, but we're following that one.
I know that you don't have the data to put together with this cycle that you discussed, but you're having meetings with these teachers on a weekly basis. What are the teachers saying now about progress? What kind of comments are you receiving from them?
Well, I think teachers are focused on the individual kid, and they're really just still focused on every day, what struggles are kids bringing to me, where are my kids at, they're, knowing where those students are at, and trying to pull a whole team approach, using interventionists to help support them. I think they're going to be focused on the kid. And they're not worrying about, am I going to get from an F to a D or a D to that's not them. They're looking at kids every day in their room, and what do they need for those kids.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about what they're faced in just a minute.
Awesome. Board, is there other questions or comments? If not, the recommendation before us is to approve targeted improvement plan for Southwest Elementary. Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Janet Lee, is there a second? Mr. Norwood, all in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, that passes. The next item we're going to talk about are those STAR questions. Dr. Lovesmith, if you'll go ahead and give me the answers.
I will.
Thank you.
I'm excited about this. I don't know why, because it's weird that I would be excited, but I am, because I feel as if, so we're at the point of this presentation because we were talking about all the work we've done in educating on the accountability system. And we've talked about those domains and how you get those domains and how you get those letter grades and what all goes into school improvement. But you know what we haven't done is we haven't sat down and said, hey, here's what's on the test. Because really what all this boils down to are children taking tests and teachers preparing kids for those tests. And that is a tough job. And so my job in just a few minutes is to give you that glimpse. What is on the STAR test when you're an 8-year-old? And then what does it take on a teacher to get you there? And so we looked at 8 questions. I did not pick the hardest ones on the test to prove any point. In fact, what I did was pulled up the answer keys and looked for standards that crossed all the tests so I could best carry a standard. It just so happened I got some hard questions. And we're going to look at 4 questions in math, 4 questions in reading. We're going to look at those questions at the 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and high school level. So with that being said, the first question, and I have pictures of children at those age levels, because I think it's important to remember. You're 8, and you're sitting down for a test that's got like 40 questions on it, and math. And one of those questions is based on the TEAC that you are to be able to compose and decompose numbers in expanded notation. So you are to answer on number 27 of your test in math at 8, which answer choice does not describe the number 7,140. So you have to know which are the 3 correct answers and then be sure that you identify the incorrect one. And so in case you were wondering, I'm sure you all got it, but the correct answer was B. It's not 40 tens, it's 4 tens. It's 40 ones. 3rd grade. 5th grade. 5th grade, this TEAC was to compare and order 2 decimals to the thousandths place using the greater than, less than, or equal sign. So in this question, you were to take 4 varying pounds of suitcases. You were to expand those decimals out to the thousandths place so that you make sure you're not reading 75 is greater than 8.8 if you look at that second one, but you would know it's actually 0.8, 80, or 800 to get it all the way to the thousandths. And then you would have to find out which position Juan's suitcase would be in once you ordered them from greatest to least. So there's multiple things going on in this question. In addition to a reading ability that you need to have to read the question, you would then expand them out. And again, in case you just want to check yourself, the correct answer was H. Now we're in 8th grade. Here, the TEAC is to order a set of real numbers arising from mathematic and real-world context. So in this number, in this problem, it's number 17, you are to order them. You can now convert either fractions to decimals or decimals to fractions, whichever you please, in order to put them in order. And then you're going to order them as runners in a competition and who completes from fastest to slowest. So in this, you also need to know on your own, because I'm not going to tell you, that in a running competition, the fastest number would in fact be the smallest number, and then you would order them. Again, that answer is number C. Some of you are looking at me like, wow. You have to have experience, and we're right. And so, you know, when questions are in place, and there's been lots of discussions in the circle about life experiences. So did you understand? Have you ever been to a running competition? Do you know that fastest is the smallest number? And so we're not only teaching math, we're teaching in context to real world. And then, of course, in Algebra 1. Now, let me point out, Algebra 1, to pass the test is a part of the 5 tests that you're required to pass for graduation. It's not the highest level math course you're required to take. So you're actually required to take Algebra 2. So you have Algebra 1, Geometry, and then Algebra 2. This is a test for all students, regardless of your ability in math. It's just a standard question. The TEAC that aligns with this is factor, if possible, a trinomial with real factors in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, including perfect square trinomials of degree 2. And in this question, the correct answer is in fact G. That's required for a high school diploma. Now, for teachers in the math world, I'd like you to just understand what they are up against. I'm only going to look at grade 3, just for time's sake. The state produces a blueprint in mathematics which tells what will be covered on the test. The state creates 4 reporting categories for the TEACs, breaking them down into both readiness and supporting standards. Again, teachers need to know the reporting categories and what differentiates between a readiness or supporting. Readiness are new introductions at the grade level. Supporting should have been taught in prior grades. From this, they further break it down, and what we know is that there are 44 standards on the test that teachers would need to get students to mastery level at in approximately 175 days. However, there are 53 TEKs that they're responsible for teaching. So you're not required to just teach what's tested, but you're expected to teach all those TEKs and then focus on the standards. And then make sure that you differentiate or provide, additional support for any students not coming to you at third grade ready to take that test. That's in the math world. Then we move to the reading. So reading is a little bit different, just to kind of give you some contextual place for this. When you think about reading, you often think about learning to read. So can I read what's put before me? And then can I comprehend? So can I read it, and then can I understand what I've just read? However, in terms of the STAR assessment, we are expected to get students to not only be able to read and to comprehend, but to be able to both summarize and infer. Infer being the highest category. And inferring is really focused at, do you understand not only what you read, but maybe why the author wrote it from that perspective, or why certain characters responded certain ways within the story. So you're inferring. So this is question number 24. This is question number 5 on the third grade STAR test. There are typically 4 or 5 stories on that test. The 24 indicates paragraph 24 of the story they've just completed, so that they can begin to answer question number 5. And in this question, the inference comes when you read in that question, what is most likely the reason Frank hides his waffle? Now, it would be hard for you to have gotten the right answer because you didn't have the entire paragraph in front of you, but it was D. The next question, you can see the inference coming in this question where it says, the sentence suggests that the narrator believes. They have to know what a narrator is. They have to be able to infer what they think the narrator believed in the story, and in this it was answer G. Then we get to 8th grade. Now we have inferring with author's purpose. What best conveys the author's main message? Now in this question, this is question number 3. They've just read a story. It has, I know, at least 21 paragraphs, because each of the answers is a direct sentence out of that story, and it indicates which paragraph it came from. So the kids, if they're looking at this question, will find each of the answers in that story, but they have to be able to infer what they believe the author's main message was from that story, and that is question D, or answer D. And then at the English 2 level, you now no longer just have a reading section, you also have a revising and editing and a composition. This is the question from the reading passage. It's following the TEKs that were presented. And this is where it asks the author uses imagery. You must know first what imagery is to infer the author's purpose, and then you want to answer why you think the author used that imagery. What was the purpose behind that? And that was answer is H. Again, like the math, there is a blueprint for the reading test. This is grade 3. Here there were 23 standards that were in fact tested on the third grade test. 12 were new to that grade level. However, there are 93 reading TEKs. So a teacher is responsible for 93 different standards, 23 of which would be tested. In addition, that is assuming that a student is coming ready and at that level. So many of us were in school. When we were in school, the expectation was not that you would leave kindergarten reading. Now it is. You need to be able to read at kindergarten. You focus on reading and comprehension in first grade so that you can get to the level of summarization and inferencing by third grade when you're 8. And so our teachers, I think it's important, and I just wanted to take some time to show you that, because when we're talking about ratings and letter grades, this is the test. This is what all kids are testing on, whether you're on grade level or not, whether you're ready or not. We all know that children progress at different and various stages over a career of 13 years with us, counting kindergarten. 14 if you go to pre-K. But the state has set standard levels that students will be able to perform at or expected to perform at by that grade. I think this is evident when you look at where schools perform. So if you have students that come to you from different places and different places in their learning or their experience, it could impact how they perform on this test. And so we wanted tonight to just kind of give you what our students and teachers are doing in regard to the accountability system.
You know, the higher levels of learning they're trying to push kids to, I understand, and
Absolutely.
synthesis and analysis and all of those things that are very complicated, but oftentimes they are really for gifted learners, and I had anxiety reading some of these questions, because when I was tested as a kid, you know, it was very straightforward. It was pretty much basic knowledge level, and now it's so much higher. And I understand the purpose behind trying to get kids to that place, to be smarter, to be broader
Absolutely.
thinkers. I mean, I get it. And at the same time, oh my goodness, how many do we stress out so terribly because they're just not ready for it, you know? But we've got good teachers, and hats off to those who are helping kids be successful even with this difficulty level.
We do, and I do hats off to our teachers. I think we're asking a lot of them. I too had a little anxious, and so I'll get back to that third grade question. This hit home for me. You know, I do this for a living, but I have an 8-year-old who will take the test for the first time. And I've heard in my home, Mom, we have to take a really big test in third grade. And it's scary. And I look at that question, and I think that's 27. So if I'm already anxious about my math, and I'm maybe not as strong in reading, and you can see the math question, the math test is a reading test. I mean, if you think about third grade math tests, you probably would have thought, I mean, it would be natural to think it's 27 times 15, calculate that out, but it's more than that. And our teachers do a tremendous job comforting kids and preparing them, but it is a challenge, and there were 44 questions on that test. This was one of them.
I got all the third grade ones right at least, so it's good.
I'm really proud of you.
Had to think about the math one though, it's really hard. No, but, so knowing what we know about the background stuff that it takes for these kids to, it's not just basic knowledge anymore. Are we working that life experience stuff into our instruction? You know, like for the areas, the campuses and the kids that maybe don't have the life experiences maybe as others, are we working that type of stuff into the instructional plans that you guys are talking about?
Yes, so our teachers, so these were all questions off the STAR 2019 test. They were last year's test. They were the questions released from the state. So our teachers are going to study these. They will study how we did on them. They talk about, they look at like the right answers, the wrong answers, what do we think kids guessed. I mean, you can see how kids, you know, what answers kids did pick. And then they start to include those in. So that's why our teachers are not worksheet driven. They do a lot of workshop model so that they can talk about vocabulary that we know slips in. So the running contest that was there. You know, I think a great example is a story that if there's ever a story that talks about an escalator that used to be on the test a lot. Where in Belton or Temple do you ride on an escalator? You don't, because they're non-existent. And so our teachers know to look for language and then to explain it to kids. But some of those questions do have life exposure inherent in them.
Anyone else?
In your previous presentation, I heard you say that we need well-supported teachers. And then you've mentioned it again with, you know, teaching towards this STAR exam. What does that mean, to have well-supported teachers?
I think it means a number of things. I think we've addressed it. So I'll start with our pay. So we just gave those raises. That's important. I think the recognition of their time, what it takes to prepare, and sometimes it's just recognizing it. I happened to be in a meeting with our third grade, and we were doing a content learning day with our third grade math teachers across the district, and they were coming together, and I had just left my office from working on this presentation and had gone in there to see them, and I told them that I was giving this presentation tonight, and they were ecstatic. They just want people to understand what they do day in, day out to prepare for our students. It goes towards having those content learning days. So bringing them out of the classroom for a day. We have a sub shortage. It's hard to find subs for them. But yet those days are invaluable for helping them and giving them the time. So in that particular lesson, Susie Langford, our content coordinator, had broken down all the questions. We're giving them tools. They were walking away with things to use in their workshop. Providing professional development. It's just, there's so many, creating positive campus cultures. I mean, there's no one way to support teachers, but there's many little ways that combine together really what goes a long way is the recognition. Just understanding, for me to go in there and say, I get it. You have to teach 53 TEKS and only 44 will be tested, and kids don't come to you at the grade level. Thank you for what you're doing. It goes a long way. And so I think any ways we can find to support teachers and what they're doing for our kids is a priority.
One more question.
Sure.
I know that my wife's a teacher, you know that, and
I do.
I know when she needs to miss, it stresses her out so
Absolutely.
much to get ready to have a quality day for those kids while her not being there. And then the sub thing is such a big deal. What can we do to broaden our pool? Is it because the unemployment rate is just so low, there's just not as many? Could we pay more daily for that type of thing? How could we increase our pool in the subs?
Well, I can tell you, we work with our HR department. We have increased the pay. Our employment rate, I believe, for the area is about 2.3%. So people aren't looking for jobs, and or they have jobs or they're in well-paid jobs. And it's not a crisis or shortage that's specific to Belton. It's across the area, and I feel like we're working with HR to make sure we spread out our days so that we're not hitting all at one time. We're trying to avoid Fridays or days where we know athletics have teachers out. I feel like we're addressing it. It's just a part of the times right now.
Our greatest competitor actually is Buc-ee's.
Absolutely.
It is the driver right now. And, in the past, public education operated pretty much in isolation. It was an entity all of its own, and that's not the case anymore. We compete against all the business and industry in the area, and I think that's a huge change that has occurred just in the last 2 or 3 years. So pay scale certainly is part of it, benefits, good training for people, and then supporting folks, as Deanna said.
Good deal. Board, any more comments or questions? Thank you, Dr. Love-Smith, and thank you, Ms. Dean, for all of that great information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're
Good
going
luck
to,
with the
next
step.
on our, Jill Ross will give us an update on Lake Belton High School.
Well, thank you for having me and allowing me to come and talk to you today about the work that we've been doing behind the scenes for Lake Belton High School. Thank you for coming to visit a couple of weeks ago. You got to see the facility. But I think this conversation that you've had tonight is a great example of how all of the different pieces of the school business fit together, and we have to make sure that we address all of those issues as we prepare to open for Lake Belton in August of 2020. I wanted to tell you about the 4 pieces that we are going to focus on as a staff and with our students as we open the building, and this building really has been designed for function. We want to encourage our staff and students to be critical thinkers. We want them to collaborate. We want them to be creative, and we want them to be able to analyze. And so we have worked to create a building that emphasizes that, all of those activities, and every piece of it has a function. Every part of this building is built to have a function. We know that one of the first things that we need to do is to get things purchased, and we have worked closely with the Curriculum and Instruction Department, with Dr. Lovesmith's team, to figure out what all do we need. And this is a small piece of the math spreadsheet. We have spreadsheets for all of the different groups, and this is just a little snippet of what we're going to need to purchase for Algebra 1 so that our students are ready for that Algebra 1 end of course exam. And you saw how complex the questions are, and it's important that we give students hands-on activities. We cannot just focus on a worksheet or paper pencil task, and so it takes quite a bit of purchasing power to make that happen. We are working with all of the different parts of curriculum, and so buying supplies for instruction is important, but then fine arts is a big piece. And so I want to talk to you about what's happening with band. We're excited. We have Mr. Yergin already named as our head of bands for Lake Belton High School. He's working with Belton High School and the Marching 100 now, but it helps that he's available. And so on Thursday, we are going to meet with our students who will be in our band next year, Thursday evening at Lake Belton Middle School. And we are going to give them the opportunity to see a couple of uniform samples. We met with a focus group earlier in the fall, showed them some drawings. Mr. Zulke kind of questioned them, and they identified parts that they liked. And so he has a couple of real uniforms for us to show off Thursday evening. We're also going to get their input on school song and fight song and all kinds of great fun things like that. But what we also know is we have a lot of purchasing to do. Instruments, band trailers, all of that sort of thing, because if Lake Belton High School opens as a 4A school, we know that next year is a 4A advancing year for marching contests. And we have pretty high expectations. We want to see them come out of the district contest and perform well. So we need to make sure they have what they need in order to be successful. And the next part that we are working on is dance. And so I want to tell you tonight that we will have the Silver Spurs dance team next year, and we are excited about that. The uniforms for both band and drill team take a long time to produce. And so those are the two big groups that we needed to focus on first, to get the uniforms designed, to get them in production in order to be ready when school starts in the fall and when their seasons begin. And so we're gathering needs for them. We're working with HR to identify or to name the director, and we're pretty excited about the Silver Spurs. And then the other pieces of fine arts, choir, orchestra, theater, those positions will be posted in January, and we're working to figure out, once we identify the theater director, what performances are appropriate for a student body of just freshmen and sophomores, because we want to give them a great experience, but we also know that when we have just 2 grade levels, it's going to look a little different next year. Speaking of human resources, I've appreciated the support from Mr. Itz and Mr. Schiller. Mr. Itz came to Belton High School in October and visited with the staff and gave them a survey so that they could give us their wish for what campus they would like to be at next year. We were very clear we can't guarantee that we can accommodate that, but we wanted to at least hear what they wanted to say. And then we also told them that this is a 3-year process. We're doing it right now to open with freshmen and sophomores. We'll have to come back because we'll add juniors the next year and then seniors the next year. So it's a 3-year kind of cycle that we will go through. And our first wave of notifications for staff will come out in December. But we know that career and technology, for example, we need to get those course requests from students in December in order to determine what courses we'll make, how many teachers will we need, and so how many health science teachers, for example, will we need at Lake Belton High School, how many need to stay at Belton High School. And so we've been clear with them. They know that this is not a one-time conversation. It's going to have to evolve over time throughout the spring semester. We do have some of our positions posted now. Dr. Badishal mentioned the head football coach, that position is posted, and some other campus leadership. We also have Mr. Brian Gill is one of our assistant principals at Belton High School. He will be coming with me to Lake Belton High School, and then we will also add to that leadership staff as well. Student services is a big piece whenever we're talking about transfers and kids moving from one campus that they're comfortable at as freshmen to a new building, and so that process has started. We also are working on building culture, and that really happens. You'll see more of that visibly when we come back in January, but we're starting to get the conversation going. And then we want to make sure that we are compliant with UIL and board policy with any changes that we do with kids and where they're going and how those decisions are made. And Mr. Morgan and Mrs. Saveska are incredible and so good at what they do, and I appreciate their support. And then just to wrap up, I wanted to show you a few pictures. You've seen our Bronco and Horseshoe. Hopefully soon you'll be seeing some decals on cars with our little mascot so that we can start getting that visible for our community. We also will have a snarly looking mascot. I wanted the cuter one, but they don't really make cute ones. I think they're supposed to be tough. Mascots are supposed to be tough. So I can understand that. And then things like yearbook, making sure we have a yearbook, and the yearbook publishers are great. They understand we're going to open with a small student body, but it needs to not be a small student book. And so I appreciate their support. And then you can see some of our patches and letter jackets. I have some samples in my office, but it takes time to design the right patch because one of those patches has a little too much black. If you don't have the right amount of gray or the right shade of gray, it doesn't look so wonderful. So these are all of the behind the scenes things that we have been doing this fall, and I appreciate the opportunity to do all that work. Tammy Shannon's purchasing department is working tirelessly. Technology, Mr. Shipper, it takes everybody working together to be ready.
Thank you, Jill. Board, any comments or questions?
Go ahead.
I just know in the focus groups, one of the main concerns that seemed to be consistent through all the groups together was the movement of teachers, making sure that we leave behind in the campuses the strong teachers, not just take all the best, top-rated in each level. I know that's under consideration too, but that was consistent throughout all those groups. My second thing is the band, knowing what our numbers are going to be this year coming up with our band kids. Is that the number of instruments we've bought, and then we'll budget that in the next 2 years adding to that, because we kind of know what those are going to be already? Are we going to just kind of grow into that too, money-wise?
Right now, our lists that we're creating are for 4 years' worth of kids. So what will we need to build out and open as if we were opening in August for seniors? However, when we get all those budget requests together, we may have to do some whittling down. But we know that we will eventually need all those instruments. And So we have to plan accordingly, because I don't want to get to August the 1st and not have enough of anything.
And then on the school song, fight song, a lot of people ask about that all the time. So is it just cheaper and easier to go with an existing, like, copy the Notre Dame or copy the Michigan? Is it just because to get someone to compose one from scratch would be pretty expensive, I'm assuming?
It would be very expensive, it would be time-consuming, and then you run the risk of spending a lot of time and money, and people don't like that one either. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to work together. And then there are pieces to consider: copyright, and how much would it cost to use an existing song, can we afford it? Those kinds of things.
And my last thing is, I just want to say this is such an exciting thing, and you're building a legacy, but I can't think of a person that I would rather have leading this. I've known you for a really long time, and your family, your kids, your husband. I can't think of a person I would pick over Jill to do this. So I'm proud that you're involved in this. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to have this opportunity.
Awesome. So Jill, the logos and things that you have listed here on the screen, is this where we've pretty much landed? Are these the things that we're moving forward with? Or are these just samples, or
Like the letter jacket?
like the Bronco and the horseshoe and what's on the
Those were-
jacket? Is this what we're going to go with going forward?
That is the brand guide that we had from, I think it was last edited in January, I think.
Awesome. It does look great for this community to have been just riddled with tigers everywhere and logos of tigers. It'll be fun to see these different things crop up around the community.
We're
So
excited
thank
to
you
see
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is issue concerns for future agenda or administrative reports. Mr. Nord, do you have anything? No. Ms. Lee? Mr. Alcozer? Mr. Tigert? You can.
You can do it now.
You can. Could you just state that in your microphone so that it's captured?
I'd like to, on the facilities, to go ahead and take a look at the ag building and that stuff. Since we were expanding some of that, we need to take a look at that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to go ahead and just point out, you all have been supplied with an upcoming events list, but I want to point out some things. Starting tomorrow evening at the Expo Center, 6 o'clock, there's going to be the BHS Academic Awards Banquet. And then on, the district will be closed, all the campuses will be closed for Thanksgiving break. That'll be the 25th through the 29th. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Eat lots of turkey. And then we'll come back here for a regular board meeting at 5 o'clock on December the 16th. So the next item, moving onward and upward, the next item on the agenda is a student discipline appeal. Under the Texas Open Meetings Act, the hearing will be conducted in closed session unless the student's parent or representatives makes a written request in advance of the hearing that is held in open session. No such request has been received, so the board will now hear an expulsion appeal according to board policy, FOD legal, and consult with the district's attorney regarding the appeal as provided for in section 551.071 and 551.082 of the Texas Government Code. Unless you are participating in the hearing, we ask that you be excused until the meeting is called back to order in open session. Thank you. Okay, we will reconvene in open session. The time is 8:24. Do I have a motion?
I do. I move that the board grant the Mays appeal and amend the decision as follows. Mason Mays to serve 21 successful days to be served at DAP beginning tomorrow, November 19th.
This meeting is adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Taggart. All approved, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now adjourned.